Hello, everyone. Welcome to our show, Journey to Success. I am Ruchika Sharma from CleverTap marketing team. At CleverTap, we help businesses engage and retain their users. Today on the show, we have with us Aik Phong, or AP as a lot of people call him, who's the managing director at Fave Singapore and Malaysia. Fave is one of the fastest growing fintech platform in Southeast Asia, providing QR payments, loyalty cashbacks, to restaurants and to retailers. Let's speak with AP and understand how his journey has been so far. Hi, AP. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Thank you so much for taking out time for this. There's so much I want to ask you. So I'm going to just jump right in and ask you about how your transition happened from Groupon to Fave.
Sure, Ruchika. So on one hand, I think this was back in maybe 2017. So Groupon was looking to strategically divest its assets, right, in Southeast Asia, or to work with local JVs to strengthen their value proposition. So that's what's happened in Groupon. Now, on the other hand, over at Fave, we were trying to go into a bigger in e-commerce platform. So at the same time, Joel and CC, the main founders of Fave, and myself, we used to be with Groupon, managing Groupon APAC business, right? So we kind of pieced the two together. It was a good timing from Groupon. At the same time, for our side, with the right management expertise, we used to be part of the same entity. We have spun our business, and we were looking to go e-commerce, right? So the stars were really aligned, and that's how it came about. So that's how we assumed Groupon's business in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and then rebranded it as Fave. So that's how our journey started way back in 2017.
That's interesting. So, if you were to think of one factor that really inspired you or motivated you to start this business, what would you say that was?
Wow, that's like I think our where how we got to where we were, it's more an evolution, right? How we got to where we were. But I think the catalyst is really always trying to solve a problem, right? And I think Joel, CC, and myself, and the founding team, we always have this mantra, which is really to kind of focus on the solutions and localize, right? Because every market works very differently. So I think that was the catalyst, if you will. All right. And I think the second piece of it is really the team, right? We used to work very well together, the founders and the founding team. And we enjoyed that. And I think we can create a lot of value by working together, right? So I think that's how kind of like it started. Yeah. And then, of course, we started evolving and pivoting over the years, right?
Very, very interesting. And team is definitely a very important factor. So, starting a business is tedious, it's hectic, it needs a lot of energy for sure. So, when you were starting Faith, yeah, you and your team were starting Faith, did you have a checklist in your head that these are our non negotiables or these factors are the most important factors for us?
Mm, I think the main checklist, personally, for me, was really a good team, right? First, I think a good vision, right? And then secondly, I think a good team to follow closely. So when it first started, Joe was the main founder, right? And he had a really good vision. At the same time, a few of us in the founding team really enjoyed working with each other. So I think it's that vision, right, of wanting to create something better for the market, right? And then the good team that we enjoy working together to find the solutions and to build it, right? And then we can then serve the market better. So I think those were the, if you will, I think the must-have, right? And I think personally for me, when I first started out with Faith, right, when we started creating the business, I know whatever we started off with, intuitively will not be the end game, right? It's about constantly evolving, constantly listening to what the merchants have to say, constantly listening to the consumers, what do they want, what do they not want, and then it's about evolving it, right? So I had this mentality of the long haul and ability to tweak, right, and pivot, right, and create new solutions, and at the same time retire the ones that don't work. It's going to be super critical, right? So I think those are the very important criteria for me, right? And yeah, I think I found it, in the team that we had, right?
Sounds like you're really proud of the team that you had built.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
That's really good to know. So while you were building something that adds value and that's merchant centric and a great team, of course, which was one of your focus, I'm sure you would have had some certain set of challenges along the way. What were the three most challenging areas for you?
So I think the biggest challenge, I mean, I look at it in terms of like product, right, on one hand. And then because we're a B2B2C platform, we also have the merchants and consumers, right? And then the third piece, of course, is myself, right? Me and whoever else is the team, right? The personal stories, right? So I think the biggest challenge for product is always about prioritization, right? If you ask me, there's a lot of functions that we're thinking of, a lot of solutions we're planning to build, and we're in the midst of building it, right? I want all of them like ready now, right? We want to launch all of them for our consumers or for benefit of merchants like right now or yesterday, right? But of course, in every organization, there's always a resource issue, right? No matter how big or small you are, there's always this limited resource amount, finite amount of resources, right? So I think one is about that, always that balancing and prioritization. So I think that's one challenge. I think the second challenge is regarding merchants and consumers, right? Because Fave operates in three distinct markets, right? Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia. So, and these markets are very different in terms of consumer adoption of technology, mobile wallets, e-commerce, right? And it's very different in terms of the merchants, right? The merchants' needs are really different as well. At the same time, in each of these different markets, very different ecosystem, very different competition, right? And I guess that's a really big challenge. How to navigate in a very disparate market and very three distinctly different market in different stages, right? I think the last one is always about how do you get a good team, right? To attract good talent, and talent that will survive and thrive in the Faves culture, right? And the Faves company, right? And whatever we do. So I think there's always this constant challenge to really get good people on board, right? And then and to grow them, right? And I think we've done it pretty well. So therefore, like I'm proud of the team, but it's always this challenge, right? To get a good person that really jives off the team, we have to go through lots of interview. Maybe we may have one or two bad hires, right? And then kind of relook again, relook at what the requirements are, and find the right people on board, right? So yeah, so I think those are the biggest three challenges that come to my mind when building Fave over the few years.
So while you mentioned about how you're overcoming the third challenge, like building the team and you keep on sourcing the right talent and the good talent for Fave, what about the first two? Like how are you working on the prioritizing of the product? And another thing I wanted to understand, like it was a challenge during the early days. Is it still the same or is it different now?
Yeah, so I think how do we go about doing the product prioritization? It's really having listening to the merchants, right? So oftentimes before we create a new product, right, we do source out feedback from merchants, right, either directly or through survey forms and or to consumers, right? So case in point, when we launched FavePay, right, it was really unique in the market back like 3-4 years ago. In so much as we had a payments plus cashback rewards, right, in a mobile e-payment solution. Now that is really rare, right? Everyone was either payments or rewards, right? So we actually combined both of them together. So how do we came across that? How do we come up the genesis of the product was really listening to our merchants, right? When we took over the Groupon business, we actually talked to the merchants and kind of found out what has worked for you. Does deals work for you, right? What do you need? So and with that, we realized that a lot of merchants fed back to us that they don't just want new customers where deals work really well, but at the same time, they also want repeat loyal customers, right? And then we then sat around and said, okay, how can we piece together and how can we be that glue and that solution stack for them, right? And that's where we came out, okay, we want to be providing the digital payments, right? And at the same time provide, cashback, right? So that they actually have best of both worlds, right? So we were pretty lucky in a way also back then, 3-4 years ago, there's this huge focus in a lot of the different markets about going digital, right? Going online payments, right? Going like having more mobile wallets, right? So I think it was the right solution at the right time. So I think listening to the merchants is really important. Second of all is also having internal challenges, debates, right? Where we go divergent, then we converge on solutions, right? To make sure that everything is robust, is well thought through. And then on the consumer side, we also send out consumer surveys. We do focus group to really, really understand what they want and don't want, right? And we do that extensively. So we do either through testing on our platforms, A/B testing, trying out different things, right? Beta testing of our interfaces, etc., and through like direct consumer feedback. So I think that's how we do it for product prioritization, right? So I think that's key.
So I think it'll be correct if I say Fave is very much merchant centric. Like they would want to understand what exactly their merchants need is and work accordingly, right?
Yes, we are very merchant centric, but at the same time, we're B2B2C, right? So what that means is that we have to really take care of both the merchant as well as the consumer. So now it's also a little bit challenging because we have to balance both needs, right? And what we do is that we probably have maybe certain seasons, if we will. So at one point in time, we were really focused on the consumer, right? When we took over the business, right, of Groupon, we had to rebrand it and create. So it's really about very consumer-centric branding, marketing, or understanding what they want, right? And then we scale up to our platform back then, maybe about 10,000 merchants, right? And right now we're about close to 40,000, right? So we then started, okay, how do we serve this 10,000 merchants better, right? So we kind of set our sights a little bit, we shifted a little bit, and we started thinking, how can we add more value to merchants, right? So it became quite a fair bit more merchant-centric. So right now we have pretty good, robust systems and really good solutions for merchants, right? And now we're swinging back a little bit more. Okay, fine, that I think that's at a 90% value. Now we have to shift back to the consumer and see how we can do it. So we to a certain extent, we harmonize between those two, consumers and merchants, and we have different focus at different periods of time, right? So that's how we do it. I don't know whether that's the best way to do it, but that's how we do it, right? So far I think the app ratings, show that I think maybe we're on the right track, as well as the merchant satisfaction, where we have high retention rates of over 90%. I think tells us that we are probably on the right track.
I'm sure you're gonna get there. And every process is anyway an experience. You learn a lot from that. So, did you ever lose that balance, that harmony, something you were planning and it did not go as per your plan? And how did you do damage control at that time?
Yeah. I mean, we do, right? I mean, we have created products that didn't quite stick in the market, right? I can think of maybe like two, right? And we have to kind of like sunset them. So it's really, really painful. But I guess that's part and parcel of really pushing the envelope, right? And I think it's been well said. If you don't make mistakes, you're really not pushing hard enough, right? You're not at the frontier, right? And you're just playing it too safe. So when I say these are painful and probably mistakes, right? It's always perfect vision in hindsight, right? So I think we cannot live like this, right? Even as a company or as a person, right? So I think it's So I think just part and parcel as an entrepreneur, right? As a company, I think we need to embrace that you're going to make mistakes. You're no matter how smart a team you have, right? How great a team you have, you're going to have some failures, right? So I take it as a part and parcel of it. Thankfully, out of, let's say, I think the ratio of failure to success is probably skewed towards more success. So we're more than 50% success rates. So I think that's great, but we still do have our failures, right? And I think that's fine. I think damage control is really when we were to sunset certain products or certain features or certain services, whether we're serving to merchants or to consumers. I think then it's about how do we, take that away, right? And then to provide alternative solutions for the merchants who have been relying on them, right? So I think that's how we do it. So I think that's the biggest, mistake or challenge, if you will, right? That we go through.
And I think it's a great approach to embrace your mistakes, your challenges, and learn from them. So, if I were to ask you about your top two learnings or lessons that you got from your challenges or overall experience, let's not call them mistakes, experiences, what would you say?
The top three.
Yeah, top three would be good.
I think that's a tough one, right? I think if I was to summarize top three learnings, one would be really you need to be adaptive, right? You need to know when you should pivot, right? when the market is conditions are changing, right, or the competition changing, or consumers are changing, or technology is changing, right? So you probably need to pivot. And I think the lessons and the push to be adaptive has been super loud and clear during the COVID crisis, right? Where if a company doesn't pivot fast enough, a merchant doesn't pivot fast enough, whichever product service that you're providing, you'll be out of the game, right? So I think that's one. I think within that, that's key, right? The second thing is about grit and perseverance. And when we talk about grit and perseverance, it's also about taking steps towards mitigating whatever that is within or outside of control as well, right? So what do I mean by that? For example, maybe during the COVID crisis, right, a lot of companies, startups, traditional companies, established companies, had to relook at the cost structure, the markets they're in, whether the solutions are going to be still going to survive during lockdowns, right, over extended period of time with no end zone, right? So I think little things like this, how you're going to create new products, services, reduce your costs, right, reorganize your company, right, restructure, etc. I think that's really important, right? So I think ability to have that grit and the perseverance, I think, is super critical. So that's the second, I think, big learning. And then third learning is really at the team, right? And with the team, then you can go through all of that better, right? So I think the team, right? You're starting, of course, with yourself, to be able to weather that, to have that positive mindset, to rally the troops together, and then find solutions together. And at the same time, really try to have fun doing it as well. I think that's really the key, right? So I think those are the three big critical learnings from my journey with Fave so far.
Those were great, like really great. And talking specifically about the pandemic era, you spoke about what other businesses might have had faced. If I have to ask you particularly about Fave, what kind of impact did you see? Was there any different user trends happening or anything that you can share with us? That'll be great.
I think during the pandemic, we were pretty lucky in a sense, because a lot of merchants, a lot of businesses have to go digital, right? They go online, they have to go digital, right? So Fave really is in the business of really providing digitalization solutions, right? Online e-commerce solutions to our partners. So I think that's a huge trend. So merchants were actually approaching us and even self-onboarding themselves through our Fave platform, right? Signing up online, generating no QR code, printing them, pasting in front of the store, right? So at the same time, over the last 1 year and a half, you see governments encouraging rapid digitalization, e-wallet use, right? From Singapore, Malaysia, especially, and to Indonesia, where the governments are providing grants, right? Subsidizing setup costs, running costs of merchants, and in Malaysia, even right down to putting money into people's digital wallets, right? So we saw that happening. So it's a huge rapid digitalization, and that's great, right? Because then you are able to let your companies leapfrog once everything is back to normal, right? So I see that, and that's great, because a lot of businesses before COVID was really a single revenue business, right? Whether it's maybe just offline, right? And then what has happened is that over the last few months, merchants are now, the year actually, right? Time flies. COVID has been around for us, a year over. And they have now omni revenue channels, right? Some of them going to delivery, some having pickups, they're having deals on Fave's platform, they're setting up online shops, right? So I think that's another channel, right, of revenue that they've created. So those are the trends that I see. And I think what the other trend I see is that consumers on Fave's platform are consuming more, right? As a function of monthly active users, in terms of number of times they transact on a month, right, has increased, right? Especially once the lockdowns are over. So I think those are the trends that I see. And thankfully for Fave, we are that solution piece to glue all of that. I think on the downside is that I see, of course, a lot of businesses folding as well, right? And of course, that's heartbreaking and heart-wrenching. But all in all, huge rapid digitalization and going e-commerce and going, going to e-payments, right? So I think those are the trends that I see, and yeah, and no stop, in sight, right, with that momentum.
That's great. So it won't be incorrect if I say that 2020 pandemic wasn't that bad for Faith. Like you still managed to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, but having said that, because Fave is also enables offline merchants, right? So we were impacted for sure, right, during the lockdown, right? But thankfully, across all the three markets, Singapore recovered really quickly. Merchants were back on the feet. They were then having really, creating multiple sources of income, right, for the businesses. So we were affected, but we bounced back very quickly. Especially with rapid, especially markets like Singapore, right? So yeah, so we were impacted, but not too much. At the same time, because we are providing digitalization solutions, yeah, we were able to to service a lot more merchants who were really interested in the solutions that provided, right? So yeah, so that's how it panned out for us.
That's interesting. And you mentioned that you noticed that the interaction has increased on the Fave platform, the transactions has increased. So have you been optimizing your 2021 strategy according to that, your business strategy, your marketing strategy?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting to note that some of these solutions were merchant led, right? So some of them actually went online, and they used Faith's QR code as a source of payments, right? Even though it was originally designed for more like offline use, right? So we see actually pockets of innovation from the merchants who really wanted to service the merchants, their consumers better, utilizing a cashback offline and online as well. So that's what we see, and that's great, right? It's fantastic when the market, right, evolves, right, and creates has creative solutions, by themselves, right? So that's really good. And then for us, what we do is that we just continue to really double down on then just two things, right? Merchants, how can we provide more value to them, right? Consumers, how can we provide more rewards and savings to them? So for merchants, we actually created e-cards, which is a great way to help merchants through the pandemic period, right? When e-card is like a stock value where you can buy in advance, right? For example, your favorite Subway, sandwich restaurant, you can buy $100 prepaid e-cards, right? And that $100 goes to the merchant the time you buy it. So it really provides cash flow to the merchants on our platform. So that has proven to be really good, right, for the merchants. So we actually even worked with Facebook and Instagram to enable all these merchants to sell on Instagram, right? These e-cards and these gift cards to help companies survive through the tough periods, right? So yeah, so I think that's one. We actually created solutions and had solutions that were already on the platform and repackage it to really help merchants, right, to grow their business, right, and to sustain them. And we're also taking this period of time to really double down on our mobile first strategies, right? So I think going forward, you're going to see quite a fair bit of personalization, right, as well as better search capabilities and recommendation on the Fave platform. So we've actually utilized this period of time to really double down on the consumer side as well. So, and that's going to be launched over the next few months.
Okay, so that was really interesting. I would want to understand from you, as Fave sets a great example of brand sustainability. What, as per you, is the main factor, like one key for a brand to sustain in your industry?
Sure. So I think for us, we are really always very focused on our mission, right? What do we stand for? So the value that we provide to our merchants as well as to our customers, right? So I think that's really, really key, I think, in creating your brand and also making it very sustainable. So I think for us, it's really knowing what it is that we're providing to our consumers, right, on our platform, and of course to the merchants. And I think for consumers, for us, is really about more savings and more rewards, right? And how do you get more and more of that, right? I know it may seem really simple, but that's exactly what it is for consumers, right? Consumers who go on the Fave platform, they want to discover new places to eat, to have fun, right, to entertain themselves, right, etc. But they also want to have more and more savings, right? So I think that's one. We're really, really big on that. And then on the merchant side, it's really about providing more value add to them, right? Digitalization, more new customers, more repeat customers, and to help them lower their costs. So that's what we do, right? So for us, how we look at it, branding is really about just focusing on the value that you provide, right, to your stakeholders, right, and to the customers who use your platform. And if you do that long enough, hard enough, and you constantly evolve, right, and be relevant, I think that's when the brand slowly evolves, right, around it, and the brand messaging gets stronger and stronger through that, right? So I think it's just about the relentless focus on the value that you provide your consumers, right? So that's how I look at it. And if you do that long enough, it's going to be sustainable. It's going to be really powerful, and then that would really just lead, your branding, right?
Totally. So adhering to your core values is definitely important if you want a brand to sustain. And what about having a mobile marketing strategy in place? How important is that for a brand sustainability?
Absolutely critical, right? These days I'm on my phone more than ever, right? I'm watching shows, I'm making payments, right? And I'm using less and less of laptops, right? And a lot of times I'm actually out and about. I'm also making like video conference calls using my phones, right? So if a company is not deeply engaged with the consumer or as a mobile touch point, I think you're going to lose out. And I think the mobile is a great way for you to really understand your consumers as well, right? So with even with CleverTap solutions, we really understand, the customers, right? What they want, what they don't like, right? So I think that is proven to be super effective for us to know what the customers want, right? And then with that data, right, provide personalization and really focus solutions to them, right? Yeah, so I think it's absolutely critical and super important.
It's really good to know that we are able to support you, and we hope we continue to keep doing that. So before I end this conversation, which has been wonderful so far, do you have any 2 3 advice for our viewers today?
2 3 advice. Okay.
You can give more.
Yeah, I think, yeah, cool. It's hard to summarize, right, in 2 or 3, but I think to the viewers out there, one is that push digitalization, right? Even for Fave internally, we're providing digitalization solutions for our partners. At the same time, we are also looking inward, right? And how can we digitalize ourselves further? So we went through even internally a project maybe about a year ago, right? How do we go fully digital, right, in all aspects of running our business, right? So we actually look inward as well, and you just got to go fully digital, right, as quickly as you can, right? So that's one. And then second point is that trust your team, right? Trust your team, work with your team, especially right now with remote working. Trust them and to be able to deliver and work together with them, right? I think so. Second piece is really have a good team, trust your team, right, and have fun building solutions together. So I think that's the second piece. And I think lastly is focus on creating omni-channel engagements, create omni-channel revenues, right? So I think that's going to be the key. The COVID situation is going to come and go, right? You're not going to go extreme, right? Whether just fully online or fully offline. I think the future is going to be a nice blend. So my last advice is that go omni-channel, right? It will help you build better business, more revenue streams. At the same time, service your customers better. Yeah. So those are my three tips or 3 advice.
Those are really insightful. I'm sure everyone's going to enjoy watching this video. It has been a delight
Thank
for
you.
me personally.
Thank you. Right, Ruchika. Yeah. So really appreciate your time as well. Right. Yeah.
Thank you so much.